Greetings from the tavern, everybody. Welcome to Day 2 of BlizzCon 2019, the live host for the Hearthstone Grandmasters Global Finals. After one day of competition, we had a field of 8 players, now whittled down to just 6, as we march closer to crowning a champion for the kickoff year, the first ever Grandmaster Global Final champion. Yesterday, as you can see on the screen, it was a story about China. For years in Hearthstone Esports, China hasn't been able to perform individually in the singles competition, although that started to change last year. In 2018, China was able to win the Hearthstone Global Games right here on this very stage. Will they be able to follow up that performance? We'll find out today, as the other 3 regions in Asia Pacific, Americas, and Europe all have just 1 or 2 representatives left and only 2 spots remaining. There's gonna be some heartbreak, there's gonna be some epic and legendary moments. And here to bring you some of the action are my great buddies, Simon Sotto-Welch and David Just Saying Shan. Take it away, boys.
Thank you, Frodan. I feel like I got downgraded slightly. I was one of his best friends yesterday. Now I'm just a good buddy. I don't know how to feel about that. But my name is still Soto. I'm joined by Just Saying here. And as Dan set up for you so perfectly there, yesterday we got most of the group stage action done. We just have a couple of decider matches to play out from those groups. Then we're going to be going into our single elimination phase of the tournament to crown a global champion. And saying alongside the title of global champion, there is also an awful lot of money to be played for here for these players.
Yeah, certainly. $200,000 is nothing to joke about. That's what the first place will be receiving, along with the title. Second place getting $100,000, and overall, an entire prize pool about $500,000 on the line here.
Yeah, and that $200,000 for first place actually has big implications of the entire legacy and history of Hearthstone, because Surrender, who is still in this tournament, is in fact featured in our first match that Sayan and myself will be bringing you, is still in contention to end this tournament as the highest prize money earner of all time in Hearthstone. He would overtake Tice and also Tom 60229, who has already been eliminated from this tournament, if he can secure that first place. And as I mentioned, Casie versus Surrender will be our first match of the day. That is the Group A decider. We're then going to move forward into the Group B deciders, and in saying you see those 2 Chinese representatives waiting for opponents in those semi-finals. I don't know about you, but I've been very impressed with the play from the Chinese players so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Lee and Lion look like they're no strangers to the big stage. Very comfortable, solid play throughout day 1. Looking to see if they'll be able to keep that up going into our final day here. Certainly lives will be changed today, but going into our first match, it's going to be Casie versus Surrender. Casie, one of the most consistent players in 2018. A lot of top 16 finishes, but not too much past that. Today would be a big day for him to break that curse in a big way. On the opposing side, there's Surrender. In 2017, he had already made a run at the World Championships. In top 8, he was knocked out by Tom 60229. And here again, I'm sure he's looking to go even further beyond, make it out of groups, and see if he can push himself past his previous finish.
Set up beautifully for us there, but there is just one thing left to do before we can kick off with the action. That's introduce the players. So why don't we let Frodan do just that?
It's time to begin the march to crown a champion as we head into the decider matches for day number 2 here at BlizzCon 2019. Our first player, hailing from South Korea, with back-to-back world stage appearances and top 4s, please welcome to the stage from T1, Surrender! Their opponent, hailing from Germany, consistent as he is persistent, please welcome from Team Complexity, Casie! No second chances. Please shake hands. And let's get the final day of BlizzCon started.
Thank you, Frodan. He set it up there as no second chances. But for me, one of the big talking points here is this is actually a second chance for Casie. This is a rematch for him against Surrender, and he had some difficulties, I would say, in the opening match against Surrender on day one.
Yeah, a slight fumble, I believe, when the board was locked in and Surrender was able to find a cheeky win in with the Rogue versus the Shaman there. But like you were saying, from the initial match, it is a second chance for Casie here. In the initial pairing, I believe both of them protected their Quest Shamans, and the Druid was banned from Casie's side, Priest banned from Surrender's side. So we'll be looking to see if anything changes in that status quo as they go into their decider match here. I mean, certainly the stakes are a little bit higher, so people tend to take less risks, but that also means there's more reward for the risk takers. So we'll be looking here to see exactly how this is panned out. And it looks like it will be Shaman banned from both sides, Druid and Priest sticking to the status quo there.
Yeah, Shaman being protected from both sides, so no big change from the initials. Both players sticking to their guns, and I think both players kind of have justification to do so. Surrender, of course, having won the series, you know, why would he change his strategy in that position? I think Casie, you know, admits himself that a lot of his defeat was down to his own flaws, his own mistakes in that series. So it's no great surprise to me to see them just go back to the well with that same strategy once again. And I'm wondering if we're going to have the Shaman mirror to kick things off, because we've generally seen that be the case in the series that we've cast, where both players have been protecting Shaman early on. You can see some facts here from Casie. Dan set him up as consistent as he is persistent. And for me, maybe Casie, now this is the time for him to shake off that mantle of Mr. Consistency, because as much as we do and should celebrate consistency in Hearthstone, there's only so long you can just be top 16 after top 16 after top 16. Eventually, you have to get that big win to really cement your legacy.
Right, absolutely. And this is a competition that it's a mix of skill and luck. I mean, no one wins the World Championship without getting a little lucky, right? So
sure,
making your own luck is also part of that, right? You make sure that you play well, like we saw from RNG Lee and Lion in day one. The draws went their way, but at the same time, they took every possible edge that they could. I really enjoyed the way that they played out their sets in day one.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the consistency of top 16s and top 8s from Casie last year, I believe he had the most top 16s in tour stops of any player worldwide. That's where the skill part comes in, right? Because you can consistently find your edge over a field of players to get into top 16s and top 8s. But as you were saying, pushing over that line and getting that one big result, sometimes that's just where that little bit of luck, that little bit of roll of the cards needs to go your way. And maybe that's just what Casie has been missing in certain spots. But we are seeing some decklist information now. Shamans are popping up for both players, so it looks like we are going to be seeing that Shaman mirror come to fruition from Surrender and Casie.
Yeah, Casie and Surrender both agreed 30 for 30 on the cards in their Shaman decks. It will be an exact mirror match going into game one.
Yeah, both players like to see that Witchwood Piper being highlighted as a key card. That was a revelation that came in about halfway through the Grandmasters season. Bunny Hopper, I believe, was the first player to bring it out in the Europe region. I think most players very quickly followed suit with the one of Witchwood Piper being such an effective card in the deck. And now even with the extra Desert Hare and Evolve, needing to find room in the deck for that, still Witchwood Piper a very, very core card to the deck, in my opinion.
Yeah, and for Surrender, it looks like it's going to be keep of the Evil Totem. It's one of the best cards to coin out in the matchup because there isn't always an answer to it going into turn 2 from Casie. It's simply just the Questing Explorer, and if he doesn't have that, the Evil Totem can run rampant.
Casie here is sat on the Mogu Evolve, which in the Token Shaman mirror, you know, those are two of the most explosive cards that you can have available to you. Is it as important in the Quest Shaman mirror to have those Mogu swing turns available to you?
I think for the most part, the Quest Shaman mirror becomes a little grindier, so trying to finish the quest as fast as possible, get to those double draws off of Novice, double draws off of the Witchwood Piper are important in terms of generating resources and kind of locking out that board state. These games tend to go a little bit longer. I've often seen the Quest Shaman mirrors go past turn 10, which would be more or less a rare feat if you're playing the Evolved Shaman mirrors.
Of course it's the right way.
Ooh, questing off the top from Casie, and in typical Casie fashion.
Did you even see that come into the hand there?
The card hit the board before it even hit the hand from our perspective. That is Casie 101, although admittedly I think for most players that was a fairly straightforward decision. Casie will make much more complex decisions than that extremely quickly.
Right, and this is something I was alluding to a little bit earlier. It is simply the Questing Explorer that puts the Evil Totem to shame here. So the fact that Casie picks that up makes it a little more awkward for Surrender, but he does have the ability just to play out the quest, play on the Titanic Lackey, buff up the health of the Evil Totem, and continue this value generation.
Yeah, looks like that is going to be the line from Surrender. Just keep this value train rolling for now. Mogu going to start the turn at 4 here with the 3 minions in play. It's something that I'm sure Surrender is going to be paying a lot of attention to. But now with the way this board state is breaking down, there is a real possibility that Casie can get the full Monty next turn, get the Desert Hare down, potentially the Mogu Flesh Shaper as well, alongside that Evolve. That's something that Surrender is going to have to keep in mind here in how he chooses to commit to the board and also what trades he makes in terms of how many minions he's leaving on the board at the end of the turn.
Right, and certainly the Desert Hare pickup was one of the key impactful cards for Casie because it looked like Surrender was going to run away with Valley Generation in this game. But it seems like Casie will be able to kind of mimic the Evolve Shaman a little bit and get an explosive turn to boot here.
Is there any turn Surrender makes here that doesn't walk into this Mogu from Casey's side?
I mean, I think you're absolutely committed. You've also seen this MC tech come out, right? So you're not that afraid to put out some extra additional minions onto the board. And it's fairly unlikely, right, out of a 4 or 5 card hand, especially because you're keeping Quest in the mulligan. And Casie being on the play, not having an extra mulligan option. It's so unlikely that his hand ends up being, you know, what it is from what we can see here.
Feels like a lightning bolt to me. X might seem to attractive to us based on the hands, but I think it'd be way too slow in this scenario, especially with the overload for Surrender, meaning that he can't even play it down on the next turn, and this is going to be the biggest of swing turns now.
Surrender gives it a nod. He sees the Mogu come out as well here.
That's a lot of green portraits.
That is a Houndmaster Shaw as well. Who needs to finish the quest in the Quest Shaman Mirror, right? When you've got starts like this coming out from Casie on turn 4.
Surrender currently on 4 out of 6 here, so he's still some way away with only 3 mana available to him. The Mind Control tech is about as good a draw as he could have found, but it's still looking some way away from being good enough on this board state.
If he plays out the MC tech now, it needs to steal the Walking Fountain, but even then, it kind of just runs into the Hecklebot, right? Yeah. For Surrender, he's able to finish off the quest and not overload if he goes for Novice Engineer and the Witchy Lackey, allowing him to potentially go for the double hero power and the double steal the following turn. But even then, the board state is so awkward. He needs to steal the Shaw, he needs to steal the Walking Fountain, and he may have realized here that even with the best take from MC Tech this turn, it's not enough to swing the game back.
Yeah, completely agree. I think next turn if he doubles up, it's sure. If he gets sure, he can take either the Hecklebot or the Walking Fountain and be in a reasonably good spot, right?
I hope you like my invention.
I say good. A reasonably not immediately dead spot, let's put it like that.
Right, and certainly the nice thing about playing like a Quest Shaman Mirror is that you don't have to worry about things like Bloodlust. So Casie, the damage that he has is basically the damage on board, sans, let's say, like a Life Drinker or something.
Casie choosing to take some Bog Slosher value back here. I guess that is the best battle cry that he can return to his hand in this scenario. Golden Scarab, discover a 4-cost card.
He does have the 4-mana card, right? The 3/3 that equips an extra weapon, and
sure.
Casey's down for the all-phase plan at this point, which seems like it might pan out pretty well.
Yeah, I guess it's a balancing act, right? Because this took less stats off board. He took a 2/2 off the board as opposed to a 3/3. Still got a reasonable Battlecry value off it. Mogu draw now, though, from Surrender. That does increase the power of his swing turn quite significantly.
I don't think there's any other option for Surrender. It is going to be the double MC tech, so let's see what it is here. Surrender already shaking his head on this one.
Needed the shore, didn't get it, and that means Surrender just has to throw out the GG, give up the concede. That is a very, very quick game 1 for Casie, and I think that is exactly what he would have been looking for in that position. Start of the day, new day. I'm sure there were just a few nerves kicking in, especially based on the result of his series against Surrender first time. So just, you know, a nice blessing of the Shaman gods to hand him that game number 1 is probably exactly what Casie needed to settle his nerves a little bit.
Yeah, I think the way the trades panned out in that last turn or so, the Hecklebot was left as a 3/4, so if the Walking Fountain had been stolen, it would have had a huge impact, but unfortunately not the right pan out for Surrender there.
Yeah, that's a really good point. He certainly did give himself some outs there, especially with the Mogu being drawn as well. The Mogu didn't have fantastic trades, and it's not like it was getting mutated or anything after the fact on the board, but there was still possibilities. But I think, you know, the Houndmaster Shore just completely blew that game wide open because Casie was allowed to dictate trades so perfectly alongside the Walking Fountain that he found in that position. But honestly, even with a fairly generic average outcome from his 4 drops and 8 drop in that scenario, I think Casie would have been miles ahead in that game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is kind of where we are in the meta right now. Shaman does have those explosive turns, and Casie, I don't blame Surrender for playing out his hand at that point. We've seen the MC tech, and Casie just had the absolute nuts when it came to the punish there.
Yep, it was really hard to avoid playing into that, but either way, where we are is that Casie is going to go to a 1-0 here. Remember, winner of this progresses through, loser of this is out of the tournament. You do not want to miss the conclusion of this series. Make sure you come back after this break.
BlizzCon 2019 is brought to you by Coca-Cola, the official refreshment of BlizzCon. Facebook Gaming, a world of play. Samsung SSD, performance gamers trust. Corsair, do your thing. And by NVIDIA.
My name is Jung-soo Kim. I am Surrender.
네, 블리즈컨이라는 곳은 모든 블리자드 게이머들한테 꿈의 무대 같은 곳이잖아요. 근데 제가 한 번도 블리즈컨을 이때까지 가본 적은 없어가지고요. 그래서 블리즈컨에서 대회할 기대도 되고요. 그리고 게이머로서 블리즈컨 행사를 살펴볼 생각에 또 기대됩니다. 아무래도 제 생각에는 첫 번째로 월드 챔피언십에 진출했을 때인 것 같아요. 월드 챔피언십에 진출하기 위해서 그 전에 서머 챔피언십에서 우승을 했었고, 서머 챔피언십에서 정말 뭐 퍼플이라든지 오렌지라든지 정말 뛰어난 세계국급 선수들을 꺾고 우승을 했기 때문에 그때부터 많은 선수들한테 인정을 받기 시작하면서 저 자신에 대해서 되게 자랑스러웠고 저 자신을 세계급 플레이어라고 칭할 수 있게 된 것 같아요. 저희 부모님은 제가 하는 일에 대해서 항상 자랑스러워하세요. 제가 무슨 일을 하든 항상 응원해주시고, 다른 한국계 부모님들은 되게 자식이 하는 일에 간섭하고 약간 컨트롤하려는 경향이 강한데, 근데 저희 부모님은 좀 되게 다르셨던 것 같아요. 저희 아버지가 아마도 뭐 어렸을 때부터 스타크래프트를 되게 좋아하셔서 실제로 스타크래프트 PC방 대회 같은 데 나가셨던 적이 있거든요. 그래서 좀 더 오픈된 문화가 아니었을까 해요. 일단 당장은 이때까지 한국 선수가 한 번도 해본 적 없었고, 그리고 저도 해본 적 없었던 결승전 진출을 당연히 목표로 하고 있고요. 물론 당연히 우승하는 게 훨씬 좋기는 해요. 근데 다른 선수들에 비해서 큰 대회 경험이 많기 때문에 좀 더 저한테 유리한 것 같기도 하고요. 그래서 저는 되게 저는 우승할 수 있을 만한 자신이 있는 것 같아요. 제가 글로벌 파이널에 진출하고 나서 되게 한국 팬들이 많이 저를 응원해주시는 분들이 많으셨는데, 그분들한테 정말 감사하고 그분들의 응원에 뒤처지지 않는 성적을 거둘 수 있도록 노력하겠습니다.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Hearthstone Grandmasters Global Finals here at BlizzCon. There you can see ready and raring to go Casie and Surrender soundstage. Currently, Casie 1-0 up in the series, and this is the final game of Group A, the decider game from Group A. Winner of this progresses through to the semifinals. Loser of this, their BlizzCon is over. Their Grandmasters season is over.
Yeah, and certainly Casie and Surrender are both top contenders in this top 8, and I'm sure both of them were looking to break their curse and make it a little bit further in the world stage today. Unfortunately, only one of them will be able to make it out of this match and putting himself forward into the group stages.
So with this,
or into the final bracket.
Indeed. With this Shaman win being picked up in the mirror from Casie, we've talked before about, if you lose the Shaman mirror, your Shaman is still very well positioned in the series. You're still likely to get a win with it. Is that still the case here for Surrender with the Quest Shaman as opposed to the Token Shaman?
Right. I mean, I think as bad as the first game looked, as lopsided as it panned out, Shaman is still the most powerful deck in both players' lineups. So I expect the Shaman to have good matchups versus Casey's Warrior, and having the Druid band out, it's maybe a little bit in a rougher situation against the Priest, so potentially Surrender might even take it off and not play Shaman going to this game too. The matchups are good against the Warrior, but Casie in this spot might be more likely to queue the Priest up.
Are we ever going to see this this Paladin come out from Surrender? That's my question, because I believe only 2 players brought Highlander Pally to this tournament. They're both still in contention. Both of those Highlander Pallies are still in the tournament as we stand, but neither of them have played Paladin up to this point.
Right. I mean, certainly it's there just to kind of round up the lineup. You've built this lineup themed around tempo with the Rogue, with the Paladin, Shaman Priest, of course. It might be a deck that just kind of is there to solidify the lineup, and it can have an impact in maybe the best of 5, but certainly they're not considering it to be one of their top 3 decks in this scenario.
And how much room is there to do that kind of thing in this format? Because I know I talked to a lot of Grandmasters during the regular season about why we were seeing like low win rate decks, like Control Warrior, for example, Druid at certain points as well was very low win rate overall, but they were consistently being brought as part of these lineups. And players were sort of explaining to me, like, you can bring decks just to influence the way that your opponents pick in certain situations with no intention of actually playing them in certain series.
I mean, sure, absolutely. When we had the Grandmasters season going on, a lot of that meta ended up being just Priest mirrors, right? And some players were second guessing whether or not to queue the Priest first, simply because someone like Hunter-Ace keeps bringing Warrior every single week. But if you look at those kind of stats, it seems like it was one of those decks that rarely saw play overall.
We are ready for potentially the final game of Group A here, and potentially the final game of Surrender's Grandmasters season, as he is going to queue up this Quest Shaman against the Priest from Casie. One keeps the Evolve alongside the Quest. Do you agree with that decision, Sam?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there it is, the Desert Hare. I was going to say that the Evolve is the more impactful half of the Desert Hare Evolve combination, because Evolve alone on any board can kind of solidify your board state. The Desert Hare is just kind of an extra bonus.
Sure.
I mean, Surrender does kind of get the bad news that he is queuing Quest Shaman into an unfavorable, but from Casie so far, not the start that he needed here. No one-drop in hand, and it looks like he might have to deal with an all-in plan with the injured Blade Master going into the next few turns.
It does very much look that way with the Blade Master. It's basically just Blade Master and friends, right? Like, he needs to get that Blade Master down on board sooner rather than later, and then if it lives, he can just start healing it up with the Nefset Ritualist. If it dies, well, all the better, because then it's just his solo Psychopomp minion at that point.
Right, and I think from this match, both of these players have been given kind of mediocre hands, and it'll be interesting to see how the players play out this kind of fair game of Hearthstone as we go into the next few turns before Hare Evolve may come down.
I was going to say, can we call the Desert Hare Evolve hand a mediocre hand from Surrender?
It might be the hand that he needs overall, right? Like, Desert Hare on 4 is probably, if you were to map out some of these games, the highest win % that you can possibly get in this bad matchup against Priest.
Sure.
But certainly he doesn't have ways to contest until then, right? Like, Surrender was missing a 2-drop. Right. He was missing activators for Wasp, potentially, and things like that so far.
Right.
So outside of Desert Hare, like, the hand hasn't quite panned out as nicely.
Yeah, fair enough. He certainly, like, we could have seen a Light Warden or a Northshire Cleric or whatever else just run away with the game, right? Just because there was no early response from Surrender.
Right, and those are kind of the turns that Casie was hoping to take advantage of in the early game, is just having that Northshire, having something like Light Warden even run away with a little bit of healing, solidifying the board state for him. But now it becomes a little more awkward as he opts to probably go all in on nature as the turns pan out here.
Surrender thinking about evolving this board solo now that he has a 1-drop. Interesting. Okay, so this might just be caster vision, but I was kind of invested in throwing that 1-1 into the Blade Master to stop exactly this play happening on Casey's side of the board, so he couldn't take the value trade first and then drop the Nephthys Ritualist afterwards.
I mean, definitely Surrender was thinking about it too, right? Like, not going face for 1, potentially maybe just not going face to give him the Light Warden heal, but I mean, Injured is on the board at this point.
Right. Oh, the Restless Mummy is huge here for Surrender for some immediate clearing power.
And Mummy's certainly making a big deal, getting rid of the 2-3, isolating the Blade Master once more. And the unfortunate thing for Casie, even though he has this Blade Master, he doesn't have any good targets yet for the Psycho Bomb, so his tempo curve going to the next few turns is looking pretty weak. And we've seen Surrender build this board with Desert Hare Evolve. It's likely Surrender will remain in control of the board at this point.
Yep.
And certainly the silences are nice draws later on if we see taunts come out, but at this point, Casey's looking for much more.
Casie might have to just end up silencing the Murloc in play, right? Because that does draw 2 Sludge Slurpers as it stands currently, which would be pretty insane for Surrender in this position.
Yeah, definitely an above average evolve from Surrender as well. So we're kind of seeing Shaman from both sides. Game 1, Casie had quite an insane Shaman pull, and Surrender here bringing it back with the Desert Hare Evolve on 4.
Casie just maxes out on tempo, and yeah, he is going to commit the second silence just to deny these Sludge Slurpers from Surrender. But he used the first silence just to remove Taunt so that he could take a bigger trade on the board with his Blade Master before the full heal. Casie is, as they say, just playing his cards here, which is kind of an oversimplified way of just, you know, maximum tempo every turn is generally what that means. And that's what Casie is committed to with this line.
And for Surrender here, it looks like it's going to be Mogu Flesh Shaper coming out for free, another Evolve at this point. Mutate if he doesn't like one of the pulls that he's getting.
Surrender looking incredibly stressed for how good his position is currently in this game. But you can't blame him with the stakes here, everything that is on the line between these two players.
I wonder.
I think for Surrender, he's just mapping out how much of the board he wants to clear, and I think he's going to opt to take an additional 5-drop here over clearing the 2-3. And Alec here is huge, and behind that, the Emperor Cobra makes it very difficult for Casie to commit much more onto this injured Blade Master as well.
Yep, both silences used on top of that as well, which means that that Emperor Cobra is almost always going to get value. Everything Surrender rolls can attack immediately in this game. It's almost like he's got a Houndmaster Shore of his own, and yeah, I think we've seen maybe one questionable concede so far in this tournament. I think that one from Casie a lot more reasonable in that situation.
Right, and I think this match, like, Surrender kind of knew going into it that he got the bad news that he's going to queue Quest Shaman into the Priest, which is unfavorable. He went for a riskier keep with the Evolve, making sure that, I mean, he got rewarded, right? He got rewarded with the Desert Hare, and much more, actually. That hand ended up panning out beautifully. So now Surrender with the Shaman win under his belt. Casie having Warrior and Priest left, Surrender having Rogue and Priest. So for Surrender, the Priest is kind of the more safe pick here. The Rogue has a good matchup versus Priest, but it's also being deterred from being played because Casie has that Warrior waiting in the wings as well. So likely, based on the defaults, Casie should be leaning towards Warrior, and Surrender should be leaning towards Priest Q in this next Game 3 here.
Well, we will see if that is how it's going to pan out. Crucial Game 3 coming up very soon. You do not want to miss it, but we just need a quick word from our sponsors.
BlizzCon 2019 is brought to you by T-Mobile. Their newest signal goes farther than ever, and it's built 5G ready. MSI, True Gaming. Intel, the official CPU partner of BlizzCon. And by HyperX, we're all gamers.
welcome back. Just like that, we have our game 3 set up and ready to go for you here. And Sayin, I think you might have made a little bit of a boo-boo before we went into the break there as you were breaking this down. Surrender's
a big
Priest
misreading from my part. Yeah.
is actually banned in the series. So with that new information, do you want to run all that back and tell us how it's going to break down from here in your mind?
Sure. So Casie still has the same deck. Surrender has the Paladin and the Rogue. And again, the Rogue is still being deterred from being played. Surrender now has kind of a strange Q option where the Paladin is okay against the Warrior, but slightly weaker against the Priest. So really, this is a mind games moment here where Surrender, if he lands Rogue into Priest, he's looking all right. If he lands Paladin into Priest, he's looking pretty bad. And he would like to land Paladin into Warrior. And it's kind of hard to get a read on what Casie might be queuing next here.
So when you get put in a situation like this, like, is there any like Nash equilibrium stuff that you can do? Are you literally flipping a coin? Are you random.orging? Like, what does your decision point come down to?
Likely, if I am able to get some read on the opponent, I'd like to play the opponent more. I think that kind of is the edge I'm looking for here. So if Surrender knows Casey's tendencies, he would most likely rely on that. Surrender actually queuing up the Paladin here, betting that Casie is going to queue the Warrior instead.
You can see with this is that Highlander Paladin I've been talking about that we are yet to see so far going into this from Surrender. His lineup has been relatively successful, but the Paladin has not been an active part of it, at least up until this point. But I know there are still several very high-level players who put a lot of faith in this Paladin deck. You know, Orange being one of them, went through an extended period of saying that this deck was the absolute nuts. You know, he brought it to Bucharest. He kind of staked his reinstation into Grandmasters on that deck in Bucharest and didn't quite make it off the back of the Paladin, but he has shown to be a very successful deck, and it's shown to be quite powerful in this matchup as well, where it looks like Casie is going to be going with his Control Warrior here.
Right, and Surrender certainly has some faith in Paladin as well. I believe it's just one card off from Orange's list in Bucharest, and Orange was absolutely crushing Warriors in that tournament as well.
Yeah, I mean, you can absolutely see why, right? Like, Mysterious Challenger on its own, once that rips all the, quote, bad cards out of your deck, you do have that old Secret Paladin feeling where, you know, you hit that Dr. Boom into Tyrion curve, which in this case is, you know, Siamats and Ragnaros and all these other late-game bombs that you can just keep dropping to keep up the pressure on Warrior, coupled, of course, with all the early aggression that you're able to throw out as well.
All right, I'm a big fan of Surrender's tech choices for the Paladin as well. Having the additional Spellbreaker is very threatening against a Warrior. It makes it a lot harder for Casie just to slam Cartoot Defender down and hope that it actually does something in the matchup. So for Surrender here, deep in the tank on the mulligan, I think the key cards he's really looking for are the Sir Finley of the Sand to get an upgraded hero power.
Yep. He's
also looking for some mechs to magnetize, and of course to draw some early cards with Crystology wouldn't be half bad either, but he's eyeing the Secret Keeper and whether or not this is going to have too much of an impact throughout the early game here.
He holds on to the redemption. Wow. I was going to go to bat for the Bellringer Sentry. I think that card is just too good not to keep, especially when you're on coin in a lot of matchups. But the Redemption Keep is not one that I was expecting.
I think Surrender is eyeing how impactful maybe Secret Keeper can be with one secret kept, and then potentially drawing a second one somewhere along the curve. 3-4 is a very good stat line to have against Warrior because it's one of the things that evades that early Reckless Mummy.
Okay. We talked a little bit yesterday about tactical roping, but I don't think this is the case here for Surrender. I think that was very, very genuine decisions. He had 3, you know, justifiable one-mana plays in his hand that turn.
Right,
finding the right ones, very important.
Surrender playing it safe there, making sure that he plays around the potential of Weapons Project, taking out the Secret Keeper without getting any value going into this turn.
See the way this curve is going to pan out is looking very, very solid for Surrender now off this keep. Ooh, a Noya module now giving magnetic options as well.
And Surrender actually, that is one of the nicer draws here because it isn't the Noble Sacrifice, right, off the Secret. So Casie would be able to deal with Secret Keeper, but now with the Anoyo module standing in the way,
right,
you know, Casey's standard turn 4, turn 5 plays are kind of blocked out already. And it's kind of the power of the Paladin here with the Magnetics and the Secret package coming alive here in the early game.
Yeah, so if he chooses to go Sentry instead, he already has Redemption in play, right? So if the Mummy runs into the Secret Keeper, he's getting it back anyway, albeit debuffed. But then he also has the Battlecry pool. The Battlecry pool could be the Noble Sacrifice. It could be the Avenge in this situation as well. So it's kind of arguable about which puts him in the better position here.
I think the Annoyo module is kind of better played early on, just because it buffs your board immediately as well, so it pushes some extra damage. And you're not taking any risks with threats being eliminated this way as well.
Okay.
I mean, at this point, Casie just kind of is forced to spend his mana, albeit as awkward as possible. I like the fact that he's not going for any attacks here as well, just kind of feeling it out.
Yeah, with this 4 mana spent on the Restless Mummy already, he can potentially look for Warpath clears on the follow-up if these attacks get to go his way. He has already cast a shield block, so he knows this isn't the Never Surrender on the secret side for Surrender.
Alright, Surrender's curve lining up beautifully thus far.
He finds the Noble Sacrifice off the pool.
Noble Sacrifice and Redemption, not the two secrets that work the best together. You will be resurrecting a 2-1 in this case every time.
Yep.
Let me think.
And Surrender, even with as aggressive a start as he's had here, is going to hit a brick wall very quickly with those 2 Cartoon Defenders in hand from Casie. But he does have the ability to keep going here with that Pharaoh's Blessings, going to keep him up some tempo. He has got extremely annoying and sticky minions in play already. So Casie looks like he is just kind of stalling for the foreseeable future unless he can land a pretty insane warpath over the next few turns.
No tomb can hold me.
All right, and Surrender actually trading into the front half of the Mummy. When he has the Noble Sacrifice already in play, it seems a little bit weird because it should be able to check the majority of the Warpath clears as well, right?
Sure, yeah, makes sense. I don't know if there's just other secrets he's trying to represent with that attack, but I do agree with you. I don't, like, based on what Surrender knows about his board position that Casie doesn't, I don't think that attack does an awful lot to benefit him.
I like Surrender's thought process throughout all of this. He knows exactly where the Secret Keeper's going. We get that out of the way.
Yeah.
And now we're looking at the rest of the turn a little bit here. I think he's trying to pan out how he can build a sticky board and make sure that he has something to Pharaoh's Blessing on the following turn, but also give himself enough reload. So he's likely going to keep something like the Brazen Zealot for turn 7. And that way he makes sure that he doesn't have any weak turns from this turn on.
Yeah, come turn 6 and 7 is basically the point where all of the potential warrior clears become live. So just Warpath on its own is like triple Warpath. That's something that you have to play around. Brawl is, of course, a concern. But then also come turn 7, like Warpath Plague of Wrath is something that you have to potentially deal with as well. So that is really the turns where you will generally see a lot of thinking in terms of how to ration out your threats, making sure that you can fill out several turns throughout the game, as Sam was talking about.
And Casie under a massive amount of pressure here. The mechs in themselves are already very difficult for a warrior to deal with, so Surrender already has that edge where the mechs are sticking on board. He always is almost guaranteed the potential of Pharaoh's Blessing or Blessing of Kings going to the next few turns. So Casie does have to play around some additional burn here.
Again, Noble Sacrifice still in play. So Surrender does not need to protect this Divine Shield, as weird as that sounds. But, you know, if the Divine Shield goes down, suddenly Warpath Plague of Wrath that I was talking about beforehand does become live. But since that Restless Mummy can't attack without hitting a Noble Sacrifice, you can see Casie checking that for himself now, gets the bad news. Warpath Plague of Wrath is not even going to be a clear here.
Right, Surrender had this play in check already. And I believe the Restless Mummy was able to deter about like 3 damage with an attack from the Mega earlier on, but certainly Surrender sees that he has all the checks crossed out here.
Extremely good outcome for Casie in that spot. The 2-1 Defender that came off the Noble Sacrifice and the Redemption ends up living, and now the Never Surrender comes down.
The Never Surrender.
I was kind of unclear as like, do we just ignore that because it's so obvious? Are we going to make the joke? Like, I don't know. I didn't know where to go with it. I'm just going to let it sit there.
I mean, normally you have to have won a world championship to get a card named after you, but in this case, Surrender already on the luckier side of that half.
I know. Bunny Hopper already got it. He didn't win a world championship. He got Pogo Hopper.
Pogo Hopper, Desert Hare.
I mean, yeah, Bunny Hopper's just cheating. I don't know how this works.
Yeah, I think he ended up just with a good name pick at that point. And the clears lining up extremely well for Casie here, able to dismantle the amount of pressure that Surrender's been able to put on.
Responsible sequencing play is never going to change in that spot, I imagine, but just to do things correctly for the sake of doing them correctly, he rips out the Omega Assembly after he learned what the secret was. And now with Kartuk Defender number 2, essentially Kartuk Defender number 3 and 4, and the N'Zoth to play out here, unless there's a Zephyrus pickup for Surrender in the near future, he is going to have no way of pushing through this wall. But there is that Spellbreaker that Sam was talking about at the start of the series.
Right, and I think for Casie here, he's seeing the finish line at this point, right? He's got the second card too. He has the N'Zoth follow-up. Like, this is kind of the ideal situation for Casie here. If I'm on Casey's side, I'm playing out the Death Rattle, saying, even if you have the ability to Spellbreaker this, you will not be able to get lethal this turn, and N'Zoth will be my final win condition.
These Sam Wasps are not going to be enough to connect this Tyrion damage to the face.
At this point, Surrender is absolutely all in. Best possible top decks from Surrender are Mysterious Challengers, Siamon, Ragnaros, but even then, nothing really answers the N'Zoth force super well. Surrender getting the head there as the N'Zoth does come down.
So I do want to talk about the previous turn where the hero power was pressed as opposed to Snip Snap coming down in that situation, which of course with the N'Zoth curve coming down would have been revived in that spot as well. Was the 2 armor gain necessary for Casie in that position?
I don't think so. Surrender's decklist does not run a Blessing of Might, so there was no need to play around the additional bursts of, let's say, Leroy and Spellbreaker.
Okay.
So it seemed like Casie was fairly safe at that spot, but at the same time, you know, N'Zoth resurrecting the 4 Kartuk defenders is more than enough to close out the game from this spot.
I wonder.
You know, I believe we casted a game, or we saw a game earlier where Fino was playing against Warrior, and it looked absolutely unwinnable. And he came out ahead with the Shark Rogue a little bit later on. I can kind of see Surrender not wanting to call it quits just yet, but the Warrior is back to 30 health with a full set of cards in hand as well.
Yeah, he does still have some potential magic left in his deck. He does still have the Rag, he still has Siamat, still has Challenger, even though most of the secrets are gone at this point. But there's also always that magic kicker of Zephyrus, and you never know what situation that Zephyrus is going to dig you out of.
Right, and this is kind of the risk of bringing Secret Paladin. Sometimes you draw the secrets and you don't draw the Challenger, right? And it ends up being that you run out of steam outside of the 8-drop curve.
Casie executing this turn about as smoothly as possible. Checks the Avenge, reacts to it accordingly with the Ziliax and the Shield Slam, and then has the Weapons Project to come down even to deny the Ashbringer, just to snatch away potentially Surrender's last hope. And there is the Mysterious Challenger, but it's a little bit too late, and that is not the Christmas tree that Surrender was looking for.
Once one of the most fearsome cards in Hearthstone, stopped out here by the absolute power of N'Zoth and the death rattles that it brings back in Kartuk Defender.
See Surrender facing his hands right now. He's looking up and down at the game board, at the deck list that he has in front of him, just trying to find a solution, trying to find himself a fraction of a percentage to come out ahead in this game. Personally, I'm not seeing it. There's a fraction of a percent, I guess.
the hook card coming down, maybe something like twisting nethers off of Zephyrus enough to give Casie enough bloods to continue.
It's exactly what I was thinking, and I love that Casie did not end up playing it, because I was about to have to bring that up as like a genuine point of criticism. But I think that is a fraction of a percentage of a way he can lose this game, whereas I think currently he is locked up. So I think not playing the Hakar there is extremely sensible. He can develop a similar amount of power to race his opponent without playing the Hakar anyway, right? So it just seems like an unnecessary risk.
The victory is yours.
And that is going to be it. Unfortunately, Surrender is going to end his Grandmasters season and also end the Asia Pacific Grandmasters season, as both of their representatives have now dropped out of the tournament. Casie, though, keeps flying the flag for Europe. He is going to advance through into a semi-final matchup now.
Right, and absolutely going into day one, I think I was looking at APAC, I was looking at Tom, looking at Surrender, like these two veterans. I was trying to map out this veterans versus newcomers storyline, but going to day two, it seems like we have lost our hope in the veterans outside of Bloodyface, who still will be in the decider match coming up after this as well.
Yeah, and I talked about some of the lesser represented decks being in that series. Surrender only one of 2 Highlander Paladins, and we saw the Paladin look a little bit weak there. I did mention that both of the players went, up until this point were still in contention for the tournament, but the Paladin hadn't been seeing play. For Casie, he's one of only 3 Warriors in the tournament, and all 3 of those Warriors are actually still in contention as well. So do you like Control Warrior, N'Zoth Warrior as a pick for this tournament?
I think the Warrior going into best of 3s is a good deterrent, but a lot of times you're not going to see too much of it being in the actual queue. But in best of 5s, it can be a pretty detrimental class to bring in your lineup, because we do see the potential of something like Malydruid from VK Lion coming out, and that's kind of a way to stomp out the Control Warriors as well, right? Like Lion has the Highlander Hunter and the Malygos Druid. She has those anti-control elements, and when you have to play the best of 5, the Warrior needs to find a win, right? And that makes it a lot more difficult when Casie has brought it to the best of 3 side, as well as leading on to the best of 5.
Very good. Well, that is Group A wrapped up and done with, and we just have Group B to resolve now with their deciders match. Just Gallon, and Hunter Ace will be standing by to talk you through that one, so do not go anywhere.
BlizzCon 2019 is brought to you by Coca-Cola, the official refreshment of BlizzCon. Facebook Gaming, a world of play. Samsung SSD, performance gamers trust. Corsair, do your thing. And by NVIDIA,